Ilai, la, la, la. I lie, lie, lie. You can close the door if you want. I lie, 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 lie. I lie, 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 lie. I lie, 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 lie. I lie, lie. I lie, lie. I lie, 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 lie. I lie, lie. Did I lie, lie, lie. I lie, 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 lie. Did I lie, lie, lie? Did I lie, lie, lie? Shalom Aleichem to Aryeh and to everyone else joining us, and of course to my mother who watches every week, and David and Avital and everyone else, Katie, Bezat Hashem. And tonight is Yom HaAtzmaut, the end of Yom HaZikaron, goes into Yom HaAtzmaut. It used to be, there were fireworks, but in recent years they stopped doing that because of the wars and all the people traumatized by war. Although it's ironic, they have a siren in the middle of the day, which both times made me jump, both on Yom HaShoah and Yom HaZikaron. Both during the day and at night. When they did it, it was like, what? Another missile? From where? Where's this coming from? Oh, right, I forgot. With Baruch Hashem, we had the Brit Milah of our grandson yesterday, Yehuda Shmuel. That's his name. We did not guess that one. We were Shneur Zalman. There was a whole list of names. Yehuda Shmuel was on the list. But Shmuel is the Rebbe Maharash, the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was the Rebbe Shmuel. And the Brit was on his birthday, which was Bet Iyar, Tiferet Shebetiferet. And Natan Chaim's birthday was Gimel. So he asked his father to go for a hike. We went for a hike to Ein Lavan, down the mountain. Very nice. And then around all kinds of other places. And here we are on Yom HaAtzmaut, learning Torah. So, Zat Hashem, Rabbi Nachman, I don't know if he was a Zionist or anti-Zionist, or maybe like the Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, kind of in the middle. He definitely was pro-Eretz Yisrael, because he said, every place that I go, I'm going to Eretz Yisrael. And Friday night in Mayanot, I don't know who started it, every Friday night everyone starts singing in Mizmor LeDavid. I think they say, B'chol makom she'ani olech le'Eretz Yisrael. Every place that I'm going to Eretz Yisrael. Have you heard that, Friday night? So yeah, it takes off every Friday night, and then everybody gets excited, they start jumping and singing. So here we are, B'ezrat Hashem, we're in Eretz Yisrael, and so hopefully we'll make Eretz Yisrael. We're learning from Torah Peh, which is 80, and it starts off, Hashem oz la'amo yiten, Hashem yivarech et amo b'shalom. Hashem gives strength to his people. Katie's there, Shalom Aleichem. And he blesses them with shalom. Now we know the word yivarech is bracha, and bracha is to take the blessing and bring it down. Like your berech is your knee, so pretend this is my leg. It doesn't work very well like that, like this. Okay, it bends, and your knee brings something down, the knee bends down, and we have, I don't know if it's lahavrich, or I think that's the word, where you take a vine and you put it under the ground, and then it grows back up again. That's how they do vineyards. That comes from the same source. So when it says, Hashem oz la'amo yiten, Hashem gives strength to his Jewish people. He blesses them, meaning he brings down to his people shalom. And we said that shalom is the vessel to receive Hashem's blessing. But shalom is not peace like we're used to. Shalom is the combining of two opposites. And here he brought before fire and water, and he also brought kindness and stringency. So in order to have true balance, you have to have both kindness and stringency. And the example that I give often is a parent that forces their child to brush their teeth. Unfortunately, when the kids get older and they don't brush their teeth, they get cavities. And my kids, as older kids, they were like, okay, now I'm 18, 19, you don't have to brush my teeth. I said, so brush your teeth and floss your teeth, but they don't. And now they go to the dentist with cavities. So that's the kindness, right? You're forcing your kid to brush their teeth. That's the kindness. It's stringency and kindness together, and that's giving your child, in a sense, shalom. Because even though they're getting the tough treatment, it's coming from a place of kindness, and it is bringing them peace or tranquility or completeness. That's where we got to last week. Yivaer et ha-yichud ben, and we also talked about Yosef. I believe we talked about Yosef. And Yosef was the combination of these two. I'm sure if we didn't talk about it, we're going to talk about it now. Yivaer et ha-yichud ben ha-chasadim le-gvurot. He's going to explain the connection between kindness and stringency, ha-ne'asa al-yedei kiddush Hashem, which is made through sanctifying one's life for Hashem. And I said Kiddush Hashem is not just sanctifying your life, it can also be putting yourself out there in a public way. For example, there was a guy, I remember hearing this story, it was told by, I think it was either told by the guy or told by Bill Gates. It was a Microsoft event. They wanted to pay this guy $1 million to come and speak. He wrote some book about the leopard spot or something like that. And it was a business bestseller, and Microsoft wanted to come and speak, and they offered him $100,000 to speak, and it was on Shabbos. So he said, no, I can't come. So they raised it to $250,000, and he said, no, I can't come. And eventually they raised it to $1 million, and he said, no, I can't come at Shabbos. There's no way I can come and stand there with a slideshow and a microphone, even for $1 million. And Bill Gates said, well, that just proves that there's some things that can't be bought. But that person who kept Shabbos, and Shabbos was more important to him than $1 million, and I think they did pay him to come on Sunday and speak, but I don't think they paid them $1 million. That was a Kiddush Hashem. The fact that a person is willing to stand up for their Judaism in such a way is a Kiddush Hashem. And you also see convoluted ideas of Kiddush Hashem. I don't know if you've seen people that have a tattoo of tefillin. Have you seen it? I've seen it. Like actually seen it. It's amazing. Yeah. They have the lines drawn on their arm as if they're tefillin, and the box here and everything here. It's amazing. And that's completely forbidden to put a tattoo on your body. But they're so proud that they're Jews. They want everyone to know they're Jews. They're tattooing it on their body. So the intention behind it is a Kiddush Hashem. I'm so proud to be a Jew that I want everyone to know it. Unfortunately, they didn't have the education to know that putting on real tefillin is more important than putting on tattooed tefillin. But still, the intention is there. So he's going to explain how these two things come together, kindness and stringency, through the sanctification of one's life for Hashem. And how is it possible that even the outright intentional sinners of the Jewish people, Mosrim Nafsham an Kiddush Hashem, are also willing to give up their lives for Hashem? And there's many stories, historical stories, of people that were completely assimilated. They had converted to Christianity. They were wealthy. They were married to a non-Jew. Their children were not Jewish. They were completely assimilated, as much as you could be. And whoever it was that came at the time, the Cossacks, the Nazis, they were willing to give their lives up for Hashem, for remaining a Jew, to die as a Jew. And of course, also that's the story of Purim, that all of the Jews, anybody who wanted to get out of the Purim decree, could have just said that they're not Jewish. End of story. But all of the Jews said that they're Jews and they're willing to die as Jews if that's what it takes, and that's when they received the Torah of their own volition. And this is the idea of shalom between kindness and compassion. Sheyeshno etzel Yosef, that we have by Yosef. Shu b'chinat mesirut nefesh an kiddush Hashem. Yosef is an example of self-sacrifice for the sake of Hashem, for the sanctification of Hashem. Ki kiddush Hashem ugam kein b'chinat chasadim gvurot. That when a person gives their lives up for the sake of Hashem, it's also kindness and compassion. Ki amoser et atzmo al kiddush Hashem, because the person that gives their life for Hashem's sake, and there are three things that we have to do it for: avodah zarah, idol worship; giloy arayot, illicit sexual relations; v'shfichot damim, and killing somebody. So if somebody says to you, worship this idol, like in the way that idols were worshipped, you're not allowed to do that, even if it means that somebody sticks a gun at your head and says, if you don't do this, I'm going to kill you. You have to say, I'm not going to do this. The same thing if they say, there's a donkey, go have sex with the donkey, you're not allowed to do that. And if they give you a gun and stick a gun at your head and say, go kill your friend, you're not allowed to do that. So that's an example of those three things that a person has to sacrifice their lives in order to not do. Meitchila hu nitlehev beshalhevet ahava shel Hashem yitbarach. In the beginning, a person is surrounded by this fiery flame of a love for Hashem. V'zeu b'pchinat chasadim, and this is the kindness. So when a person reaches this point where they're going to have to give up their lives, knowing that it's for the sanctity of Hashem, they get like this inspiration, this calmness that they didn't have before, and that's the kindness. Because kindness and love are one attribute. And then the person overcomes their negative thinking. And what is this thing? What is the yitzro? So in a sense, we have the yetzirah that's coming and trying to stop the person from giving their lives for Hashem. So it's the desire for living and the fear of death. When a person now first feels this fiery love for Hashem, then they overcome their fear of death. Umoser et nafsho lamut al kiddush Hashem. The person allows themselves to be killed for the sanctity of Hashem's life, for the sanctity of Hashem's name. V'zeu b'chinat gvurot. Now this comes from the stringency side. Nimtza, it follows, shebemisirut nefesh naaseh chibur shel chasadim gvurot. So we have this creation of the kindness and severity when a person sacrifices their life. And also in the other way that a person does it. Let's say a person says, I'm going to make a Seder in Nepal. The first people that made the Seder in Nepal, that was a huge deal. I think it was Asi Spiegel and his wife were one of the first people that did it. And I remember him telling the story that they got there and there was absolutely nothing. Like they had to buy ovens, they had to buy everything, they had kasher everything, they had to prepare everything. They had a shochet, and the shochet had to do shchita, and it's like a huge deal. That is a type of mesirut nefesh, and that requires also chesed and gevura. On the one hand, you're pushing really hard to do all of these very difficult things. On the other hand, you're surrounded by this fire of love from Hashem for the thing that you're doing. Shezeu b'pchinat shalom, b'pchinat Yosef. This is connected to shalom, and this is connected to Yosef, kanal, as mentioned above. Shehu chibo shel chasadim gvurot kanal, which is the connection between kindness and severity, as mentioned above. V'lachen matzanu devar chadash. We found something new, or matzinu. She'afilu poshei Yisrael, even the sinners of the Jewish people, heru et nafsham lamut al kiddush Hashem. I'm not sure about the word heru. I guess they were inspired. They were uplifted to give their lives for the sake of Hashem. Be'er b'parporot ha'chokhmah v'zeh leshono, parporot ha'chokhmah, which is a commentary on the Likutey Moharan, he says this, רוצה לומר כי לכאורה גם דבר זה הוא בחינת שני הפכים. That if we look at it again, we will see that this also has two opposites. כי פושע ישראל וקשה לו לעמוד בניסיון קל ולשבר איזה תאווה קטנה. Why is a person a sinner amongst the Jewish people? Because it's difficult for them to refrain from their desires, even a small one, and doing a transgression. ואף על פי כן yen merutze limtzo nafsho al kedush Hashem. But nonetheless, a person will allow themselves to give their lives over for the sanctity of Hashem. Ach hu mechimat shenitorer bo bebchinat Yosef ad kan leshono. And that's because he has this attribute of Yosef that comes up within him. Hainu bebchinat Yosef shehi bebchinat nisiat kapayim. What is Yosef? It's the raising up of the hands. גורמת לו שאפילו שאינו יכול לשבר תאווה קטנה, which causes a person that can't hold themselves back from a small transgression, אבל יכול הוא לשבר תאווה גדולה שהיא תאוות החיים. But the person can break a great desire, which is the desire to live בשביל Hashem יתברך, for Hashem may be blessed. And as it will be explained how this comes about. So we know stories of this. We know there are stories from the Holocaust, there are stories from the Crusades, all kinds of stories of people that were in positions of power, influence, that could have saved their lives, and they chose to die as a Jew. Because something comes out at that moment. The Alter Rebbe calls it the Pintel Yid. It comes from the place of Yechida, he calls it. Yechida is the soul connection that's never cut off. And at that moment, something happens. There's a transformation in this person. They might see, all these Jews being killed by the Nazis, and they will come forward and say, I'm also a Jew. And the Nazi will say, you realize, if you say you're a Jew, I'm going to kill you. And he says, I am a Jew. And the Nazi kills him. And I remember one story I read, this was probably in Hasidic Tales of the Holocaust. Is that what it's called? I read it every year in Tisha B'Av. Hasidic Tales of the Holocaust. It's not Hasidic Tales. There's maybe like one or two in there. To tell you, I finally reached the last story after maybe 10 years of reading this book on Tisha B'Av. Totally blew my mind. And it turns out, I don't know if you've heard of Leon Wieseltier. Have you heard of him? Now, he would be very disappointed if you didn't hear about him. He's pretty much disappeared from the Jewish scene. He wrote a famous book called Kaddish when his father died. A brilliant guy, I would say an apikoros, used all of his Torah knowledge to just do stupid things. But he had a great line. He was very outspoken, maybe in the last 20 or 30 years. He had a great line. Here in America, we don't have any more apikorosim because everyone's an am haaretz. Meaning we don't have anybody who intentionally uses their Torah knowledge to take people off the path of Torah because everyone is an ignoramus. It was a great line, and he was very upset at American Jews for not learning Hebrew. He said, in other countries around the world, Jews learn Hebrew. I met a woman once, this was the craziest thing, in the shuk. She shows me all the coins in shekels and agorot, and she says to me in perfect Hebrew, what is this? Like, which is 5 shekels, which is 10 shekels, which is an agorah? And I said to her, we're speaking in Hebrew. What is this, like a dystopian reality? And she said, no, I'm from Brazil, and I speak fluent Hebrew, but I've never been to Israel before. So I've never used the currency. This is my first time using the currency. Incredible. So it can be done. And he was very critical of that anyhow. The last story in the book was this totally, totally crazy story of basically the whole family being decimated, like a big, wealthy, powerful family by the Nazis, one by one. One little girl survived that was Leon Wieseltier's mother, turns out, Stella. Wild story. Now in the book, there's a story, it's one of these like very short stories of a Nazi that catches a Jew and he sticks a gun at his head and he says, Jew, I'm going to kill you. You have anything to say before I kill you? And he says, let me say a blessing. And the Nazi says, there's a blessing for you to say before I kill you? And he says, yes. He says, Baruch atah Hashem, shelo asani goy. And then the Nazi shoots him. So this is, why am I mentioning this? This is the type of Mesiut Nefesh. And there's many stories like this. Like stories just keep popping up in my head. Story after story after story of people that are willing to give their lives up for doing a mitzvah. There's another story, I'll just tell it quickly, of this guy who wanted to light a Chanukiah on Auschwitz. And he got together a little bit of oil from the women that were working in a factory there, and some potato peels that they dried out, and they took some thread from their uniform, and they made a wick, and they lit it, and they put it next to the window. And of course, one of the Nazi guards saw it, and he came in, he said, who did this? And the Jew said, it was me. The Nazi beat him so bad he couldn't move. The next night, he lit the next light of Hanukkah. And that was the end of the story. What happened to him, I don't know. But the fact that somebody could be beaten by a Nazi in Auschwitz and still get up and want to light the Chanukiah, knowing that he might be giving his life, that's what we're talking about here. And Rabbi Nachman wants to know, where does this come from? And he says it comes from, he doesn't actually say that. He says it comes from Yosef. But he will say, he says, what's the thing with Yosef? Yosef has the Vav in the middle, and the Vav is the connection of stringency and kindness, and the Jews and Hashem, and it creates this connection. It's saying basically the same thing the Alter Rebbe says in different words. Okay, so a person is surrounded by this fire, and that's the Bechina of Yosef. And therefore, we discovered something new. Shafilu Boshe Yisrael heru et nafsham lamut al kiddush Hashem, are willing or inspired to even give their lives for Hashem. V'lich ora devar tamua, and this seems like a wondrous thing. Ketzad yesh lahem koach lazeh. How do they have the power, the potential for this? Meshiv, and he answers, ki amu b'midrash, because it says in the midrash, Yisrael ala b'machshava v'chulei utchila lehabriot, that the Jewish people came up in Hashem's thought in the beginning when He started creation. Kodem shenivra olam, before the world was created. V'afilu poshei Yisrael, and even the sinners of the Jewish people. Adam shechotei afilu b'mezid, somebody who transgresses even in an intentional way. Somebody who knows what they're doing. They decide, on Yom Kippur, I'm going to have a barbecue on the beach while I'm undressed and going to make pork and eat it with cheese, and I'm going to do it dafka because I know I'm not allowed to. So he says, even somebody who goes that far, sha'adayin hu mechuneh b'shem Yisrael, still that person has the name Yisrael, Jew. Yesh la'Hashem yitbarach ta'anug hitparut gadol mimenu. Hashem still has a wondrous joy from this person, even that person that's the biggest sinner. Kamo shekatuv, as is written, Yisrael asher becha et pa'er. Who am I going to be proud of? Hashem says, we're going to be proud of the Jewish people. Perush, meaning Hakadosh Baruch Hu bara et am Yisrael kedei she'tiyeh lo hitparut mehem. Why did Hashem create the Jewish people? So He would have joy and pride from them. Nimsa, it follows, she'afilu beposhei Yisrael, then it follows that even if somebody is a transgressor amongst the Jewish people, sheyesh behem b'chinat Yisrael, they still have the attribute of Israel. Hashem yitbarach mitpaer behem, and still Hashem is proud of them. V'zeu b'chinat sfirat hatiferet, and this is connected to the Sphira, the attribute of Tiferet, which is beauty. And Tiferet is the combination of Chesed and Gevura, kindness and stringency. Umemele yesh behem gam et sfirat yasod, and then it has also the attribute of foundation. Ki hatiferet vayasod mechubarim yachad, because tiferet and yasod, which are stacked one on top of the other, are connected to one another. Ukshe רוצים להפריד אותו מבחינה זו של ישראל, when a non-Jew or somebody wants to separate this Jew from the attribute of being a Jew, and you think about the people that were held hostage in Gaza, they made hamotzi on a pretzel, and they tried to have wine, and one guy, he was given a Devar Malchut, and he learned this Devar Malchut for like 2 years. These are completely secular people. Where is that coming from? The same place. Kagon, for example, Shagoy רוצה להעביר אחד מפושעי ישראל על דעתו. For example, a goy wants to make one of the Jews leave his religion. להוציא אותו, one of the sinners of the Jewish people leave his religion, to take this person out, מכלל ישראל, from amongst the Jewish people, מבחינת ספירת התפארת, which is connected to the attribute of tiferet, beauty, שהיא בחינת אות ו' Shel Hashem Havaya. So we spell out Hashem's name. Hashem's name is Yud Ke Vav Ke, but in order to not say Hashem's name, we spell it Havaya, which is Hey Vav Yud Hey. And in those letters is the letter Vav. And the Vav is the Vav HaChibur. So we have that in Hebrew when you write, for example, V'chol Ot, where it says right here, V'chol Ot, that's the Vav Chibur. It's always connected. Kanuda. V'chol Ot Vav, and every letter Vav, Efshar Likoto below Vav Shniya. You can't say the letter Vav without another Vav. It has to have a second Vav. You can't say V, because that's not the letter. Shehi Nikret Vav Milui. Hamilui. This is called the filled out or full Vav. And in Gematria, when they want to spell out further, deeper meanings in the Gematria, so they'll spell out each letter. And Vav is Vav, how is it spelled here? Vav Aleph Vav or Vav Hey Vav? I don't know, we're going to come across it in a second. Or maybe it's just Vav Vav. V'chol Ot Vav Yefshar, right? Without the second one, B'pchinat Yosef, and this is connected to Yosef, because Yosef also has the Vav. B'pchinat Sfirat Yasod, which is the attribute of Yasod. Yasod is connected to Tiferet. Tiferet is the Jewish people, even the sinners of the Jewish people. Nimtza sheshnei havavin, the two Vavs, hayu havav rishona, shebeshem havaya v'ashniya b'milui. The first Vav that comes in Hashem's name, and the second that comes about when we spell Vav with two Vavs, Him tamid mechubarot yachad. They're always connected with one another. So even if there's one Vav, like in the word Yosef, it still has two Vavs, because if we say the letter Vav, it brings in the second Vav. V'lechen sherotzim lahafrido mibchinat Yisrael. And so when somebody wants to separate a Jew from the attribute of that person's Judaism, mitoreret bo miyad b'pchinat Yosef. The attribute of Yosef is immediately comes out, automatically comes out. Shu koach hashalom, which is the power of shalom. Hakolel chasadim gvorot yachad, which includes within it kindness and compassion, as we mentioned before. Shezeu b'chinat kiddush Hashem, which is connected to sanctifying one's life, as we mentioned before. Right, when a person sanctifies their life, first they have compassion and then they have stringency. V'techef umiyad nitorer bo b'bchina zo shehi ratzon nimtzo nafsho. And so immediately a person is able to access this level of their soul that allows them to give up their lives on Kiddush Hashem Kanam for the sanctity of Hashem's name, as mentioned above. And so even somebody who's an absolute and total transgressor, even in the most intentional way, yesh koach limtzo et nafsho al kiddush Hashem, has the power to sacrifice their life for the sanctity of Hashem. Kasher rotzim lehotzio me'shem Yisrael, when they want to take the person out from amongst the Jewish people, from the name of Israel, from them. And we also see that with the soldiers. You know, when I first moved here, the first Yom HaZikaron that I was with Noga, when we weren't married yet, she got together with all of her friends, all of her Israeli friends, and Yom HaZikaron was this really heavy day. I mean, everyone was depressed and everyone was sad, and it was so heavy, I had to leave the room. I couldn't be with them. Now, I didn't realize that they all had lost friends in the army. But I stood there as a foreigner, even though we're all speaking in Hebrew, and I was just like, this is not my thing. You know, I'm not connected to this. But at this point in my life, after being here for so long, pretty much every time I see another soldier was killed in the news, and part of the reason I stopped reading the news so much is because I can't emotionally handle it anymore. I start crying because I know what it is to be a father, a grandfather, a husband, and I know that when these people are dying, they're a child, they're a husband, they're somebody to someone else, and it's just incredibly painful to see. However, you have a problem in the world. This is a fascinating problem in Japan and Germany, for example, where nobody wants to serve in the army. They need armies. Germany needs an army because Russia might invade Germany, and they have to have something there to defend themselves. And robots are not going to do the job. They need actual soldiers, and they can't draft people. And Putin, well, forget it. You know, Putin took criminals out of prison and threatened people left and right, and was willing to give enormous amounts of money to get people to go into the army. And Japan can't get anybody to join the army, which is so funny because, you know, they used to be such a dangerous force in the world, but now everybody, a government for them gives services and nobody's going to give their life for a government service. But here in Israel, you have even secular people that are willing to die to protect the Jewish people. That is on Kiddush Hashem. There's no question about it. And you see it all the time, again and again, and you see it from people that you never would have imagined, and it comes from this place that they didn't even know that it existed. But if you say to them, so fine, you get an exemption, go home, you don't have to serve. No way. They want to serve, they're willing, they know they're willing to sacrifice their lives. I know my son, Natan Chaim, who is recovering from knee surgery, he just desperately wants to go into the army, wants to serve in an infantry unit. All of his friends, he tells me, this one's in Lebanon, this one's in Gaza, this one's in all these are all guys that have been hanging around our house for the last 10 years, so I know them all. They've even come in their uniforms to our house, and he's sitting there saying, you know, I want to be there too. And I'm thinking, well, it's not so bad that you're not there right now, you know, but whatever Hashem has in store, Hashem will have in store no matter what. There's no way to avoid that. Okay, so let's continue here. So Yosef, oops, where am I? No, I'm on the wrong page. Okay. So now we have something Miveir Reb Nassan Zan. So Reb Nassan adds, and we're going to learn for like another 5 minutes, and then I have a very cute story. Reb Nassan adds, Perush, meaning, Ki kol echad miYisrael, afilu posher Yisrael, every one of the Jewish people, even the transgressors of the Jewish people, kol zman shehem Yisrael, nikra alav, ki nikra posher Yisrael. So as long as they're called the sinners of the Jewish people, they still have the name Yisrael, and that connects them to Hashem. For Yisrael af al pi shechata, Yisrael hu. This is a famous phrase from Sanhedrin, that a Jew, even though they transgress, they're still a Jew. Ume'achar shenikra adayin b'shem Hashem, b'shem Yisrael, and since the person is still called a Jew in the name of Israel, Shu b'chinat Vav, which is connected to Vav, and Vav is the letter in Havaya and Hashem's name. Shekeneged Sfirat Tiferet Kanan, which is connected to the attribute of Tiferet, is mentioned above, and Tiferet brings together kindness and stringency, and is connected to Yesod, and Yesod is connected to sacrificing one's life. Ankein Yeshbo b'chinat Yosef, and that's why the Jew has an attribute of Yosef, which is connected to Yesod, which is Koach HaShalom, which is the power of Shalom, which holds together these two opposites. Gam ken ki vav. So here it's spelled vav, aleph, vav. Iyavshar likota below vav shniya. We can't say the letter vav without having another vav. Hainu she Yisrael, as to say that the Jewish people, shu b'chinat vav, which are connected to the vav, mikushar bo vav shniya, it also is connected to them the second vav, shu b'chinat Yosef, which is an attribute of Yosef. Ki Yisrael v'Yosef kechada azle, kechad heimolchim kayadua, because Yisrael and Yosef go together as is known. Dahainu, that is to say, shesfirat tiferet v'sfirat yasod, that is to say that the attribute of beauty and foundation, mechuberim tamid yachad, they're always connected with one another. So we have keter, chochma bina, if I remember, what is it? How do we have, chochma bina tiferet, right? And then we have, how does it work?
So
we start at the top.
Depending on whether or not you count keter, it's chochma bina and dat.
Chochma bina dat.
Dat is the middle.
Where's tiferet?
And then tiferet would be the next middle, which comes after.
Chesed and gvura and tiferet.
And netzach, hod, and yisod.
There we go. And then malchut. Very good. Okay. So they're connected through the middle line. They're bringing together. And the middle line is symbolized by the vav. They're always connected with one another. It follows that amongst every one of the Jewish people, they all have a connection with the aspect of Yosef, which connects to peace, or bring the two opposites together, which brings a person to be able to sacrifice themselves, as mentioned above. And so the second that somebody wants to separate a Jew from being a Jew, separate them from being a Jew, that attribute of Yosef comes out, and that's what it's connected to the Jewish people. Which is connected to the self-sacrifice that a person can have for Hashem. Tahainu shalhevet shel ahava, that is a fiery flame of love. V'hitkabrut an yitzro lamut an kiddush Hashem, to overcome their desire for wanting to live and to be willing to sacrifice their lives for Hashem. V'zo b'chinat shalom, and this is the attribute of shalom, connected to Yosef, kanal, as mentioned above. Okay, so that's where we're going to stop tonight. So you understand what he's doing here. He's saying, where does this come from? Every Jew has this connection. This connection doesn't disappear, and it only shows up when they want to really do something on a level of self-sacrifice. And it also comes in a positive way. You know, when you have somebody who, let's say, somebody's standing on the street, and they say, you want to put on tefillin, or you want to light candles, and this person never did that, and all of a sudden they say, you know what, I'm a Jew. I want to light candles. I want to put on tefillin. I want to do this mitzvah. That is a type of mesirut nefesh. Where is that desire to push yourself beyond where you were comfortable before coming from? It's coming from the same place of Yosef. It comes out in the most extreme way when a person's life is threatened and they're willing to give their lives to remain a Jew. But it also comes on a lower level way from the same place. And also when somebody says, you know, I'm going to do whatever. Here, there was a woman who said she's going to have events for singles. For years and years and years and years, she had events for singles, and she didn't get married herself. And then she got married. And where does that come from? Mesirut nefesh. It comes from the same place of self-sacrifice, because to put on the event, to organize everything, to take care of everything, that has to come from a place of self-sacrifice. Okay, so I have a short story for you. On the day before each of the three festivals, Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuot, Rabbi Yitzchak Taub of Kalev would disappear for many hours and nobody knew where he went. And one year, Erev Sukkot, the head of the Kalev Jewish community, Mr. Yaakov Fish, was determined to discover the tzaddik's secret. When the Rebbe wasn't looking, he hid himself in the wagon and remained uncovered while the Rebbe was on his journey. And when Yankel revealed himself at some point, they had been traveling for quite a while, the Rebbe was very distressed. And he said, "What am I going to do with you now?" And he told Rabbi Yaakov, "Just stay here in the wagon." Now, soon they arrived in a city that Yaakov didn't recognize. And the Rebbe stopped the wagon. He began to walk down a narrow path to the mikveh. And he told Yaakov, "Stay in the wagon. Do not go anywhere." But Yaakov was very curious where he was. So he gets out of the wagon. He starts walking around. And he starts asking people in Yiddish, "Where am I?" And people had a hard time answering him in Yiddish because they spoke a little Yiddish, they spoke some Hebrew, they spoke some Arabic, and they told him he's in Sfat. And he said, "How can I be in Sfat? We were just in Poland or Ukraine or wherever Kalev is." And they said, "No, you're in Sfat." And he didn't believe them, so he thought, okay, it's a town of crazy people. So he started walking around. They're Hungary. Kalev is in Hungary. And this guy says, "Where do you think you are?" He says, "I think we're outside of Hungary. I mean, we only traveled for a few hours. How could we be here in Sfat?" And they got into an intense argument. And eventually, Yaakov forgot to go back to the wagon. And by the time he got there, he saw the wagon pulling away. And he realized that he was stranded in this town of Meshugaim, of crazy people that thought that they were living in Sfat and didn't really speak Yiddish, until eventually he realized that he actually was in Sfat. That the Rebbe had done Kfitzat HaDerech, and the Rebbe was coming to go to the mikveh of the Holy Arizal in Sfat before each Yom Tov. Now, he was stuck there. There was no way for him to get back. And so he knew he had to wait until Pesach for the Rebbe to come back. So he spent 6 months in Sfat, somehow getting by. In the meantime, his family was frantic. They didn't know where he was. They ran to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said not to worry, that their husband and father will be back for the Pesach Seder. And the day before Pesach, sure enough, he showed up. He went to the mikveh and he said, "Yaakov, get in the wagon. And next time I tell you you're not supposed to come with me, you don't come with me." I really like that story. And it says here also that the story only became known after the Rebbe passed away, because he swore Yaakov not to tell anyone about the story. That was in 1821. But apparently it was written down somewhere. Now, this is the thing with Hasidic stories. Do you believe it? Do you believe that the Rebbe actually did this? Do you believe that this guy was a stowaway in the back of the Rebbe's wagon? And that's where it's up to you, whether you're willing to believe it or not. Now, if you do believe it, it brings you to a higher level of faith in Hashem, which is the purpose of the stories. If you don't believe it, you don't have to believe it. You can also say it's just a bunch of nonsense. If you ask me, I believe it 100%. I wish I could have jumped on the back of the wagon and gone with the Rebbe to the Arizal's mikveh from Hungary. So shkoyach to everybody for watching and sticking around, and to Aryeh. And next week we'll continue Be'ezrat Hashem.